and welcome to the online service of Brookside Campus. We're so glad that you're joining us. We do want to share that if you're interested in giving, you can do that on your mobile device or right on our website. Also, we want you to know that upcoming in January, we will be offering children's ministries every week at 10:45 service, and we're really excited to get to have that back so that our children can be here with us every week, but spots are limited and registration is required. Also, if you have a heart to serve your church family, we have ways that you can do that, whether that's from home or if you'll be joining us in person on Sundays. So if you're interested, just email Casey Calhoun and she'll help you get connected. So thanks again for taking a moment out of your week and just sit back and enjoy receiving this word from the Lord and worshiping Him together as a family, even from home.
Just to rest in your nearness. could just sit and wait for all your goodness. Hope to feel your presence. I could just stay, oh, I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel you, hope to feel something again. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave home, never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Oh, but you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me. I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave, never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Oh, but you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me. You lead me. I will be yours, so I will be yours for all my life. Oh, I will be yours, so I will be yours for all my life. Oh, I will be yours, so I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy. Oh, I will be yours, so I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy light the path before me. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Oh, but you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Oh, but you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You lead me.
Hi, my name is Catherine Lewis, and I'll be reading Revelation 22, verses 1 through 5. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, as clear as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. And the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. No longer will there be any curse. The throne of God and of the Lamb will be in the city, and his servants will serve him. They will see his face, and his name will be on their foreheads. There will be no more night. They will not need the light of a lamp or the light of the sun, for the Lord God will give them light, and they will reign forever and ever. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, welcome again to the online service of the Brookside campus at Christ Community Church. We are so glad that you are here with us today. I hope you had a great Christmas celebration this week, and perhaps even you're still gathered with family or friends, and maybe they're gathered with you watching today. Whether you're here in Kansas City or elsewhere around the country, we're so glad that you've joined us to worship in this way today. And as we prepare now to look at the final message here in our Advent series, I want to just pause and pray as we begin. So let's do that now. O God, the rock of our salvation, we thank you for wonderfully purposing that your Son should become one of us, yet without sin, a sympathetic high priest on our behalf. Grant us, like Mary, to treasure and ponder in our hearts all the wonder of your Son, our Redeemer, Jesus Christ. Amen. We're here in this final message in our Advent series, and we're calling it The Pleasures of Heaven. And this is where we really want to look at what will heaven be like? What will the experience of being there be like to the best that we can understand? What will it look like, smell like, taste like, feel like, sound like? And I love how vivid children's imaginations can be with this, right? And we as our family, we've got a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. We've often had conversations that have kind of turned into debates around our dinner table about what heaven will be like. One of my kids is convinced that heaven is in the ground, in Grandma's backyard, primarily because that's where we have our 3 of our cats are now buried, is there in Grandma's backyard. So she's convinced that that's where heaven is. It's in the ground, in Grandma's backyard, because that's where the cats are at. Another is ardently convinced it's right up in the sky. It's in the heavens. But we are all wrestling with what is it actually going to be like. Now, in this series, we've been pushing ourselves to look carefully about what the Bible actually teaches about heaven, about where it is, what it's going to be like, who's going to be at the center of that life. And that challenge has caused us to rethink many of the ideas that we grew up with from popular culture about what heaven is going to be like. But I think there's one thing that everyone believes about heaven, whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult, whether you're a Christian or not. If you believe, and if there is any kind of common belief, if you believe that there is a heaven, no matter who you are, I think everyone believes at least one thing about heaven, and that is that it's going to be a place of the highest possible pleasure, a paradise. That heaven is a place of unending pleasure. And the Bible agrees. It says a bold yes to that. Heaven, the new creation, the new heavens, the new earth are a place of paradise, are a place of highest possible pleasure. The Garden of Eden regained, completed, brought to its full fulfillment. But so often our imaginations fall short of what that pleasure will actually be like. Why? Well, to paraphrase C.S. Lewis, not because our imaginations are too strong, but because they are too weak. Not because they are too vivid, but not vivid enough. We think of pleasures of heaven as something like a golf course by ourselves, or a little cabin in the mountains, or a pool side with a pina colada in our hands. And I'm sure that something like all of those will exist in the new heavens and the new earth. And if not exactly those things, something much better. But I want to invite you to think, to imagine, to dream grander, to dream bigger today, knowing that even our best biblically saturated imaginations will fall short of what heaven will actually be like. But that we can rest assured that where we have gotten it wrong, it will be better. It will be better than what we can imagine. And so here's the bottom line this morning. That heaven will be like the best of this world, only so much better. Heaven will be like the very best of this world, only so much better. And again, we are going to once again look at Revelation chapters 21 and 22 and find 3 images, 3 metaphors in those texts that ignite our imaginations about the pleasures of the new heavens and the new earth. But before we marvel at those images, before we try to let our imaginations not run wild, but expand and try to guess at what heaven will be like, I want to look back on the journey just briefly that we've been on in this series over the last 5 weeks. This is now our 5th week in this. And we began by looking at this picture in John 14 of Jesus promising us that he is going to go and prepare a place for us. We began with this promise of heaven from Jesus. He is going to prepare a place for us. And then we looked at the place of heaven. So we had the promise, then we looked at the place of Jesus is actually remaking this current heavens and current earth. The new heavens and new earth will not be this disembodied, sort of floating on clouds with harps, but they will actually, heaven is coming to earth. Heaven and earth are going to be one. The place of heaven is earth, fused together forever with heaven. Then we looked at the people of heaven, that God's big multi-ethnic family, the promise that he made all the way back to Abraham in Genesis chapters 12 and 15 and 17 is come to its fullest place in the new heavens and the new earth. And then we saw the person of heaven, that Jesus is heaven. And this week we want to look again at the pleasures of heaven. The pleasures of heaven. What will it actually be like to be there? So at first, the image that we get of what heaven will be like is the image of a city. The image of a city. So the life in the new heavens and the new earth will be like the best city, only better. The best city, only better. The city imagery is all over these final chapters of Revelation. Just listen to a few verses. This is Revelation chapter 21, verse 2. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Verse 10, and then he, the angel, carried me away in the spirit to a great high mountain and showed me what? A holy city of Jerusalem coming down out of heaven, having the glory of God, its radiance like the most rare jewel, like jasper and clear as crystal. Verse 22, and then I saw no temple in where? The city, for its temple is the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb. The story of the Bible is the story that begins in a garden and it ends in a city. It moves from a garden and moves to a city. But not just any city, a garden city. The garden is not abandoned, but rather completed. The New Jerusalem is the garden perfected. And when Rachel and I were dating, I was in the midst of launching the downtown campus of Christ Community. And I lived in a loft downtown, and I just ate and drank and slept and studied city center life, trying to establish this new branch of Christ Community in the heart of our city. I loved the city, the urban center of Kansas City. But Rachel, on the other hand, she had grown up and still actually at this time was living with her parents at 187th and Holmes on sort of the very edge of what could be considered anything having to do with the city. I mean, she was practically in the country, living in her parents' home on this 5-acre plot of land, which was landscaped beautifully. It was like she lived in a park. And she worked in a greenhouse. She loved plants. Her room was full of orchids. These are two very different realities, the city center and the park home greenhouse on the edge of the city. And as we began to move toward marriage and engagement, she gave me this postcard. Take a look at this picture. She gave me this postcard. And it's a postcard of a painting called The Greening of Chicago. And this is what she wrote to me on the back. She says, I found this picture at the Chicago Art Institute a while back, and it reminded me immediately of you and your love for the city, Bill. Plus, it's called The Greening of Chicago, and there you have it, your love of the city and my love for plants combined in one picture. Amazing. That's the picture of the new heavens, the new earth that we're given here. And if we read on further in Revelation chapter 22 and verses 1 and 2, you see the images of the Garden of Eden from Genesis chapters 1 and 2 overlaid vividly on the city. Notice the river and the tree of life language as I read these verses. Just listen for that. River and tree of life. Images that come directly out of Genesis chapter 2 show up here in Revelation chapter 22. And then the angel showed me what? The river of the water of life, bright as crystal, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. And through the middle of the street, the city, and on either side, the river, the tree of life with its 12 kinds of fruit. Our goal, our destination, our life with God forever will be lived out in a garden city. The goodness of the garden and the glory of the city. In heaven, we will experience and create all the very best of art and culture and design and farming and food and entertainment and so much more. Think about any city that you visited. Not a city at its worst. Not the crime, not the pollution, not the poverty, not the injustice, but at its best. And what do you have? museums and commerce and creativity and sports and beautiful design and architecture and plays and music and diversity and language and culture and ethnicity and food and great restaurants and recreation. Right? Cities tend to be amplifying of the human condition. So yes, they amplify crime and brokenness and pollution, but they also amplify the best of human creativity. So imagine the best city, but now with all of the draw of sin and all of the harm of injustice taken away. All these will be there, and we will serve one another in producing these wonders. Which brings me to a question: have you ever wondered, will we work in heaven? Are the pleasures of heaven compatible with work? Will we actually work in heaven? And our knee-jerk response to that is probably no, or at least I hope not. Because when I think of heaven, the first image that comes to mind for me is a national park vacation, not a day at the office. And after all, don't we think, isn't work the result of sin? Isn't that Adam has to toil and work the ground as a result of sin? But I think this is a common, this is a common misunderstanding of the biblical story, because work is created before sin enters the world. Work is a part of the goodness of the garden. God places the man in the garden with the woman to work it and to keep it together. No, sin corrupts that work. It breaks it, makes it toil. It is now a ground that produces thorns and thistles. It's the sweat of your brow. It's toil. Work is hard now because of sin, but work is not the result of sin. And yet, every once in a while, even in this broken, toilsome, thorn and thistle-infested world of work today, we catch glimpses, don't we, of work, of what it must have been like before sin. When you're exercising your gifts and talents, feeling deep satisfaction that comes when you're able to focus on a task and finish it and enjoy the work of creativity, of completion of a task. And think about it. One person's work is often another person's hobby. Right? One person may be a cook for a living. Another person may cook on the weekends as part of their avocation, as something they do to relax, to express their creativity. And we often find the people, and many people don't ever have this experience, but we often find the people who are most satisfied in life are those who have the great high privilege of being able to do what they love as a way of making their income in the world. And speaking of income, we also tend to think of work as primarily as a means of earning income, which is important, but it's actually not primary. Work is first and foremost about contribution, not compensation. And when you begin to reframe work in the language, in the paradigm of contribution, then you can easily see how work is a vital part of the new creation. Not because we have to earn money to buy food and pay for a house, but because we get to contribute and share with one another from the good gifts that God has entrusted each of us with. And here in the new heavens and the new earth, this purpose is restored, to be the rulers of heaven and earth with God. If you go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, God made human beings in His image to rule the earth with Him, to be kings and queens of God under His rule. And again, in the new heavens and new earth, this is restored. This purpose is restored. Verse 22 of chapter 5, or chapter 22, verse 5 in Revelation. Night will be no more. People will not need the light of a lamp nor the sun, because the Lord God will give them light. And what? And they will reign forever and ever. Our creation purpose to work and reign in the garden from Genesis chapter 1, verse 28 is now completed and endures forever and ever in Revelation chapter 22, verse 5. Which means that right now in your work, in your recreation, in your vocations, in your avocations, you are training to reign and work in heaven. What will your job be in the new heavens and new earth? Of course, I don't know exactly. Some whole fields of work will no longer be necessary, right? Doctors, police, lawyers, pastors. Our jobs, our careers will look very different without sickness and crime and sin and needing to teach people the scriptures. But what skills do you have that made you great at the work of being a doctor or a nurse or a nursing home worker? What skills did you have that made you a great lawyer or a great law enforcement officer? How might those be put to use in contributing and serving another way? God only knows for sure, but we all will work by reigning in service toward one another. Our work will be a source of great joy and delight. It will be one of the greatest pleasures of heaven. Heaven will be like the best city, only better. That's the first image that we're given here. The second is that of a wedding. Heaven will be like the best wedding, only better. And you also get wedding and bride and husband language all over these final chapters of Revelation as images to describe what the new heavens and the earth are going to be like. And here is just a sampling again of a few of them. Chapter 19, verse 7, the marriage of the Lamb has come and his bride has made herself ready. Verse 9, blessed are those who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. Verse 2 of chapter 21, then I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, which we just read, coming down into heaven, what? Prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. Come, I will show you the bride and the wife of the Lamb. And he showed me the holy city of Jerusalem coming down from the heaven of God. Heaven will be like the best wedding, only better. So just think for a moment, what's the best, most extravagant, most joyful wedding that you've ever attended? Think about that for a moment. Try to get that image in your mind. What was it like? Okay, do you have that memory in mind? I know it easily comes to mind for me the best wedding that I ever was a part of, that I ever got to attend. It was the wedding of two of my dearest friends. Rachel and I had just gotten married about 6 months before, and I think it was actually the first wedding we'd gone to as a married couple. And the church where the wedding was held was beautiful. And not only was it the wedding of two of our best friends, but many of the wedding party were dear to us. The wedding officiants were dear to us. So many of the guests and family that were gathered there were part of our Christ Community Church family. And the party afterward, the reception, I mean, wow, I can truly say that is the best party I've ever been to. Gorgeous location, great music, dancing into the night. The food was just unbelievable. It seemed like there was just this unending kind of just unfolding of food and drink and a great meal and hors d'oeuvres and wine and just such great joy, dancing, laughing, celebrating together the wedding, the union of our two dear friends. And this image captures the joy and life and union of heaven, that there will be feasting and celebration and rest. There will be no more tears, no more sadness, no more estranged relationships, no more shame, no more fear of others. Friendships renewed, new friendships formed. And that's why, friends, it is not just a luxury, but a necessity that we feast now. Let me say that again. It is not just a luxury, but a necessity that we feast now. We must also fast. Jesus clearly teaches that. But we also, too, must feast. Why? Well, few have put it better than Doug McKelvey in his book, Every Moment Holy. It's a collection of prayers for everyday moments in life, from changing a diaper to setting up a Christmas tree to going to the doctor. He's got a prayer for all these different circumstances. And one of my favorite is a prayer called A Liturgy for Feasting with Friends. And this is how it begins. To gather joyfully is indeed a serious affair, for feasting and all enjoyments gratefully undertaken are at their heart acts of war. Let me say that again. All enjoyments gratefully taken are at their heart acts of war. In celebrating this feast, we declare that evil and death, suffering and loss, sorrow and tears will not have the final word. Do you pray that kind of prayer? Do you think that kind of thought as you gather with friends for a party? As you gather to celebrate Christmas, as you gather to celebrate the New Year? Would your feast be an act of war, proclaiming that death will not have the last word? The new heavens and the new earth will be like the best wedding, only better. Now, thinking about weddings and marriage may prompt you to ask a question that could be included in part of a book called Everything You Wanted to Know About Heaven But Were Afraid to Ask. And that is, will there be sex in heaven? Now, if by that question we mean, will there be male and female in heaven? The answer is absolutely yes. We will not cease to be male and female. We will have new resurrection bodies that will embody our maleness and our femaleness. But if we mean by that question, will there be sex in heaven? Will there be actually sex in heaven? I think C.S. Lewis has provided the best response. Listen to what he writes. He says, I think our present outlook might be like that of a small boy who, on being told that the sexual act was the highest bodily pleasure, should immediately be asked whether you ate chocolate at the same time. On receiving the answer no, he might regard the absence of chocolates as the chief characteristic of sexuality. In vain you would tell him the reason why lovers in their raptures don't bother about chocolates is they have something better to think of. The boy knows chocolate, He does not know the positive thing that excludes it. We are in the same position. We know the sexual life. We do not know, except in glimpses, the other thing, which in heaven will leave no room for it. And what is no longer needed for biological purposes may be expected to survive for splendor, Lewis adds at the end. So it seems that our sexual experience will be different in the new creation. Not because the current experience was bad, but because it is now completed. The work of filling the earth has done. The ultimate marriage has come. Our bodies, all of them, will now exist for beauty, for splendor. This is Lewis's point. What he means by no longer needed for biological purpose may be expected to survive for splendor. He is suggesting that we won't become sort of neutered Barbie and Ken dolls, but retain all of our physicality, even that which makes us most male and female, even if it is no longer there for utility, that it will still exist for splendor, for beauty. Now, questions of weddings, of marriage, of sexuality might also lead us to wonder about, what about marriages in heaven? What will families be like in heaven? Will my family still be together in heaven? Will I still have a special relationship with my spouse in the new heavens and the new earth? And this takes us to our third and final image in the passages today. And that is that life in the new heavens and the new earth will be like the best family, only better. And this is because we were adopted into God's big family as daughters and sons, and we will be brothers and sisters in that family. Look at chapter 21, verse 7. It says, "The one who conquers will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." Now, I know for some of us, I know that for all of us at some level, and for many of us at a very deep level, family life now is difficult, painful, not what it should be. And the idea of family might bring up memories of arguing, of disappointment, of pain, of divorce, even abuse. But whether you in your own family, or maybe in the glimpse of an extended family member's home, or in a friend's home, have you ever had a glimpse of what a really good family could be? This year for Thanksgiving, we went with some of Rachel's family to Big Bend National Park in Texas. And there on Thanksgiving Day, gathered at our campsite, were 3 different generations, husbands and wives, parents and grandparents and children and grandchildren, uncles and aunts and cousins, all camping together. We played together, we worked together, we hiked together, we laughed together, we feasted together. And it was just a little glimpse of the new heavens and the new earth. Because for us now, the greatest loneliness is the crushing loneliness of feeling like no one understands you. No one really knows you. While at the same time being afraid to let anyone fully know you for fear of rejection and shame. But friends, all of that will evaporate in the new heavens and new earth. Why? First and foremost, because we will be fully known by God and fully know God. The Apostle Paul puts it this way in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 12. He says, "Now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known." The essence of joy is being seen and known and loved by another who is delighted to see you and be with you, who's looking for you. And this is supremely God, our Creator, who made you for Himself. And no one is more excited and longing to see you and more excited to see you than He is. And neurobiologists say that our joy registers for us in a face-to-face interaction, a face-to-face connection in our eyes, and our smile, and our eyes light up when we see one another. This is why it is different to talk to someone just over voice on the phone versus to see their face, even on video. It lights up a different kind of connection for us. And God made us this way for this face-to-face joy with Him and others. Listen to Revelation chapter 22, verse 4, and notice the face language here. They, His servants, will what? See His face, and His name will be on their foreheads. This is the fountain of joy forever and ever. The pleasure of heaven is found as we see God face to face and see Him. But this doesn't mean that we will simply stare across a table at God forever for all of eternity. Rather, it means that we will see God fully in all that we will do, that we will see His face in every meal, in every friend, in every job, in everything that we do. We will see the face of God shining on us, and we will delight to see His face in all that He has made. We won't make idols of His creation anymore, but rather all the enjoyment of life will be perfect enjoyment of Him. Okay, so what about that question that we started with at this point? So what will marriages and families be like? And I think the best answer is not exactly the same as today, but still similar. We've already seen that all of humanity will be one big family, adopted and known by our Father, and that marriage will be fulfilled in our perfect union with Jesus. But this doesn't mean that our closest relationships of parent and child, brother and sister, husband and wife, will all be somehow just neutralized and reset in the new heavens and the earth. I firmly believe that we will pick up where we left off with our closest relationships. Rachel is my best friend on earth, and I have every reason to believe that she will be my closest friend in the first hour of heaven together. That I will greet my mom and dad and know them in a different way than I'll know your mom and dad. That our families will feast with aunts and uncles and cousins and friends gather around the table. That this is just the beginning because we have all of eternity to get to know and love and share life with many others. And so while marriages and families will be different, the closeness of those relationships will endure. So what will heaven be like? What are the greatest pleasures that will be there? They are the greatest pleasures of now, only better, far better than we can imagine, freed from the taint and draw and pull of sin that we can only even imagine now. Jesus died and so freed us from sin so that we could fulfill our created purpose to reign with him forever. We ruined the garden, but he gave us a city. We cheated on him, but he marries us anyway. We hid and ran away from him, but he found us and adopted us into his family. And in communion, we celebrate and remember our union, our adoption, our hope of the city to come, whose founder and builder is God himself. And so now if you have communion elements available, prepare those. Feel free to pause this if you need to, and taste, drink in the pleasures of heaven that are to come. Feast in this small way as a foretaste of the feast that is to come. Celebrate now this meal that he's given us. Well, thank you so much for worshiping with us today, for joining us for our online service. We're so glad that you are with us. We miss you. Long for the time when we can see one another face to face once again. And as you go to the new year, I want to send you with these verses from Isaiah chapter 65. The prophet Isaiah writes these words that are picked up in Revelation later on. For behold, I create a new heaven and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. Be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem to be a joy and her people to be a gladness. Go in peace and love and joy to serve your Savior, who is bringing a new heavens and a new earth, the greatest of all pleasures. Have a great week and a happy new year.